Hello guys, in this video, I will tell you about all the secrets, facts, everything about Titanic ship, everything that you don't know about Titanic ship. The Titanic was a luxury British steamship that sank in the early hours of April 15, 1912, after striking an iceberg, leading to the deaths of more than 1,500 passengers and crew. Of the 2,240 passengers and crew on board, more than 1,500 lost their lives in the disaster. Titanic has inspired countless books, articles and films, including the 1997 Titanic movie starring Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio, and the ship's story has entered the public consciousness as a cautionary tale about the perils of human hubris. The Titanic was the product of intense competition among rival shipping lines in the first half of the 20th century. In particular, the White Star Line found itself in a battle for steamship primacy with Cunard, a venerable British firm with two standout ships that ranked among the most sophisticated and luxurious of their time. Cunard's Mauretania began service in 1907, and quickly set a speed record for the fastest average speed during a transatlantic crossing, 23.69 knots or 27.26 miles per hour, a title that it held for 22 years. Titanic created quite a stir when it departed for its maiden voyage from Southampton, England, on April 10, 1912. After stops in Cherbourg, France, and Queenstown, now known as Cove, Ireland, the ship set sail for New York with 2,240 passengers and crew, or souls, the expression then used in the shipping industry, usually in connection with a sinking, on board. As befitting the first transatlantic crossing of the world's most celebrated ship, many of these souls were high-ranking officials, wealthy industrialists, dignitaries and celebrities. First and foremost was the White Star Line's managing director, J. Bruce Ismay, accompanied by Thomas Andrews, the ship's builder from Harland and Wolff. Absent was financier J.P. Morgan, whose International Mercantile Marine Shipping Trust controlled the White Star Line and who had selected Ismay as a company officer. Morgan had planned to join his associates on Titanic but cancelled at the last minute, when some business matters delayed him. The wealthiest passenger was John Jacob Astor IV, heir to the Astor family fortune, who had made waves a year earlier by marrying 18-year-old Madeline Talmadge Force, a young woman 29 years his junior, shortly after divorcing his first wife. On April 14, after 4 days of uneventful sailing, Titanic received sporadic reports of ice from other ships, but she was sailing on calm seas under a moonless, clear sky. At about 11:30 p.m., a lookout saw an iceberg coming out of a slight haze dead ahead, then rang the warning bell and telephoned the bridge. The engines were quickly reversed, and the ship was turned sharply. Instead of making direct impact, Titanic seemed to graze along the side of the berg, sprinkling ice fragments on the forward deck. Sensing no collision, the lookouts were relieved. They had no idea that the iceberg had a jagged underwater spur, which slashed a 300-foot gash in the hull below the ship's waterline. By the time the captain toured the damaged area with Harland and Wolff's Thomas Andrews, 5 compartments were already filling with seawater, and the bow of the doomed ship was alarmingly pitched downward, allowing seawater to pour from one bulkhead into the neighboring compartment. A little more than an hour after contact with the iceberg, a largely disorganized and haphazard evacuation began with the lowering of the first lifeboat. The craft was designed to hold 65 people, it left with only 28 aboard. In compliance with the law of the sea, women and children boarded the boats first. Only when there were no women or children nearby were men permitted to board. Yet many of the victims were in fact women and children, the result of disorderly procedures that failed to get them to the boats in the first place. Andrews did a quick calculation and estimated that Titanic might remain afloat for an hour and a half, perhaps slightly more. At that point the captain, who had already instructed his wireless operator to call for help, ordered the lifeboats to be loaded. Tragically, this was to be the norm. During the confusion and chaos, during the precious hours before Titanic plunged into the sea, nearly every lifeboat would be launched woefully underfilled, some with only a handful of passengers. Hundreds of human dramas unfolded. Between the order to load the lifeboats and the ship's final plunge, men saw off wives and children. Families were separated in the confusion, and selfless individuals gave up their spots to remain with loved ones, or allow a more vulnerable passenger to escape. In the end, 706 people survived the sinking of the Titanic.